In today's show, revisiting my predictions from the preseason. What'd I get right? What did I get super duper wrong? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we are talking preseason predictions. Back in October, friend of the program who's been sending me these for a couple years, listener Ben, I think we actually use Ben's full government name often. Shout out to listener Ben Sprouse. Sends over-unders and myself and friend of the program, my friend Chuck, we do our preseason over-under predictions, kind of make our preseason predictions as a way to do like a big two-part preview for heading into the season. I think they're useful to look back on, not because I want to like toot my own horn. That's typically not what this show is. I do a little horn tooting from time to time, but for the most part, I think it's actually more interesting to be wrong about these things. So in today's show, we're going to revisit what I thought back in October, what I got right from the over-under lines for a bunch of players on the roster, and kind of what it tells us about where the Blazers are now and where they might and should be headed. Let us get into this one. First, DeAndre Ayton. The first over-under we got was DeAndre Ayton, 1.2 3-point attempts per game was the line. I took the under. He took 0.2. He averaged less than half a 3-point attempt a game. This was infuriating for me, honestly, this year. DeAndre Ayton took, he played almost 60 games before attempting a three. They didn't run creative stuff where they would space him to the corner and run like Tumani as the roll man, which is something I've been screaming for since the fall. Screaming is maybe not the right word. Asking for since the fall. DeAndre Ayton's a great jump shooter. Like he lives at 20 feet and he's a great jump shooter. The idea that he couldn't shoot corner three-pointers with regularity in the NBA is wild. I blame him. Most of the blame. Secondly, I blame Chauncey Billups. I think they share about the same of it. Billups needed to draw up plays where Ayton was spaced to the corner with more regularity. He needed to have sets where Ayton faded to the corner off of screens and ended up parked there because his man is going to naturally want to protect the rim, particularly when he's in the weak side corner. You're going to get someone pulled all the way into the rim. He's going to get wide open practice level threes. Everyone in the NBA can basically shoot standstill threes. If you ever watched anyone practice, like I used to watch Robin Lopez practice three-pointers, he aced them from the corner. Everybody can make standstill threes in the league. DeAndre Ayton not shooting one a night was really frustrating. He doesn't need a bomb away, but turn one of those 20-footers that he loves to take and is very good at into a 22.5-footer from the corner. A frustrating one. I was right, though. Under. Yay. It's so good to be right. It's terrible. The next one, over under 22.5 minutes from Malcolm Brogdon. I took the under on this one, and I was wrong. He played 28.7 minutes. This really speaks to how injured the Blazers were. This was back in October, right? Everybody's healthy, or at least like presumably healthy. You're kind of doing the math, right? And it's like, okay, well, every time is going to play a lot, 35 minutes. They're probably going to play Scoot 30 minutes a night. They're going to try to find 28 minutes for Shaedon Sharpe. And they're also going to still play Matisse Thybulle at the 3, and they're going to and it's like, where does Brogdon fit in? So I went under, but I think this was a good line. He ended up playing 28.7 minutes per game because he just ended up having to play a bunch when the team got beat up. I mean, one of the sort of the main sort of reason why this season that has just passed us by was a failure was because they just didn't play enough. They didn't play enough minutes with all of their guys to figure out what they have. And that's not really a Malcolm Brogdon thing. I'm more talking about Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot Henderson, like not having that trio kind of interchangeably and trying all the parts together, and particularly the two youngsters together a bunch. It's just like, it's a lost season in terms of like finding out what you have. You just really don't have any answers to your questions. You have some guesses on what the answers might be, but you don't have any answers. And Malcolm Brogdon playing those 6 extra minutes a night actually is a telling number. Next one is from Moses Brown. 43.5 games played for the Blazers was the over-under. I took the under just because, like, how is he going to play more than half the season? He appeared in 21 games. He just got leapfrogged by Duop Reith. Like he ended up 10 games into the season or whatever it was like, okay, Duop Reith ready to go, and he's going to play forever. I believe it was right around there. It's like he's ready, and he's gonna play for the rest of the time. And I mentioned this a bunch. Duop, he only got 1 DNP CD every time he was active. Once he graduated from being inactive to the active list, and they're like, okay, we need to play him because we need a little bit more help. He only got 1 DNP CD. That's 1 did not play coach's decision the entire season. Every night that Duop Reith was available, he played. A 27-year-old rookie on a 2-way contract earned his way to a permanent deal, and the person who felt it was the youngster on a permanent NBA contract, 24-year-old Moses Brown. I don't think Mo Brown is an NBA player. I think that was pretty clear this year. He's really big, and so I think he might get another shot because there's just not that many dudes his size in the world. But I think it was clear on this particular Blazer team, him not being able to earn minutes and be even like effective on either end. He could rebound a little bit, but effective on either end. With any consistency, that kind of it was a telling year for Mo Brown. The next one, Tumani Kamara, over under 33.5% from 3. I took the over, and folks, I got it right. He ended up shooting 33.7% from 3. This was right on the money from Ben. What a freaking prediction. I think this, like, Tumani's shooting is a really interesting one, right? Because at the beginning of the year, he couldn't shoot at all, under 30% from 3, and he was a big negative on on offense. And it's like, even as good as as sort of intriguing as he looked on defense early in his career, the inability to shoot, and the way defenses guarded him, and then he would drive into, like, they'd be daring him to shoot, and instead of sometimes shooting, he would either take threes that he shouldn't take or drive into the teeth of the defense. He was just a negative on offense. He lost his starting job briefly in January, came back and played more at the end of the year. Like he ended up getting back in the starting lineup, and I thought he was really, really good in the second half of the season. Shot above league average from 3, right around 38%. He showed the sort of 3-and-D potential that makes him a really intriguing player. I think he's one of the biggest victories of the Blazers season is Tumani Kamara's development. He's already a plus defender in the NBA as a 23-year-old rookie. Like, he's already a straight up just like good defender in the NBA. He can still grow there because I think sometimes he's a little overly aggressive and can make mistakes because of how hard, how aggressive he is defending his own man. But you add like his defensive chops, I think he can guard a lot of different positions. I think he could be really overwhelming, particularly against point guards, just because of his length and his strength. And if he ends up shooting, on the year, you take the whole sample, right? Below average three-point shooter on the year. But if that second half of the season is more like what next season looks like, he's a very good player. Like, Tumani is like all of a sudden just like a really, really intriguing part. Let's do more over-unders. So, I got 3 out of those first 4 correct. I would say frustrating to be right about DeAndre Ayton, and not that it like doesn't speak to Brogdon, but a frustrating part of the season is to be wrong about his overall contributions to the lineup, how much he played. But we've got more, including Jeremy Grant, Scoot Henderson, Chris Murray, and Duop Reith in the second segment. Let's talk about those over-unders and where those guys are at now heading into the off season. Join me in that second segment, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and right now, it's winner take all season in the NBA and the NHL as we get down to the championship rounds in both sports. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Make a $5 bet on FanDuel. Once you get that victory, they will give you $150 in bonus bets that you can add to any bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right. Shout out to Ben for the over-unders back in the preseason. Michael from the past with those October predictions. Here's our next one. What did I think back in October about Jeremy Grant's 3-point attempts per game? The over-under was set at 6 attempts per game, and I went with the over on this one. I thought he was going to shoot him. I thought he was going to put them up. I went with the over and I was wrong. He took 5.1. Not that Jeremy Grant didn't shoot a lot. He just shot differently than I thought he was. He kind of reverted back with this offense to taking a bunch of like crappy mid-post isolation jump shots. Again, part of that I blame Jeremy Grant. That's his comfort zone, right? Like he wants to do what he wants to do and players are going to revert to what they want to do. But this is just like the offensive system. It both like gave players maybe like, it probably tended to give players not like too much freedom to kind of to work in their comfort zones. So much of coaching is finding out what your players do well and letting them do it all of the time. But you kind of got to rein in some of their bad instincts and like letting Jeremy Grant like kind of take like very difficult mid-range jump shots as opposed to having him shoot more 3-pointers this year. It's kind of like a lot of just dump-ins to Jeremy Grant's just like not good. It's not good process. I went with the over. I thought he was going to take, 6.5. He ended up taking 5.1. I was just straight up. I was straight up wrong on that one. I'm curious what it all might look like when Grant is maybe put back in a spacer role. I don't think you can like totally, he's still going to want to do what he does, right? He's still, if he's on the team next year and he's obviously going to, if he's on the team, it's, 99.9% chance he's your starting power forward on night one. So he's still going to take some bad mid-rangers, right? Like that's what he wants to do. And players are going to do what they want to do. Like some of that is just like the nature of it. But I wonder if they could get him back in that spacer role, like, some of the reason the Blazers struggle this year is they didn't have enough shooters. What if there's a situation where like even if they largely run it back, which I hope they don't do, right? But if they were to largely run it back, just like off-ball Anthony Simons, off-ball Jeremy Grant spaced, more DeAndre Ayton in the corner and having a screener be the Toumani Camara as your small forward with Scoot operating. Like obviously like Scoot's like has some of his own challenges as an offensive player and like a little bit turnover prone, but like if you prioritize a system that would maximize some of Scoot's, what you kind of think the best version of a Scoot ecosystem would look like, could they just have a pretty similar roster with just a better feel to it? Part of me thinks yes. Part of me thinks like absolutely not. But I do think like a more intentional offensive plan with guys who are really bought into the intentionality of the plan. Because like, does Jeremy Grant want to just have Scoot run pick and rolls while he spaces to the wing? He's probably comfortable doing that with Damian Lillard, but not necessarily with Scoot Henderson, right? Like you can see, there's more to coaching than just like telling guys where to stand. There's like there's an ego management portion of it. But I do wonder if it's like if you could get a system that prioritized more spacing, more shooting, like in a more aggressive way, could you have a very similar looking roster but get different and more positive results? Speaking of Scoot Henderson, the over-under was 35.5 single game scoring high this season. I took the over. And I was wrong. His scoring high in the season and it ended up being 33. Scoot just wasn't nearly as good on offense as I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be a much better offensive player. I thought he was going to potentially lead all rookies in scoring because I thought he was going to have the ball in his hands. I didn't anticipate him shooting like, under 45% at the rim. I knew he was going to be a bad shooter, like from distance, but the layups thing kind of surprised me. And just his lack of general explosiveness in the half court. That was really eye-opening to me. Again, maybe there's a world where that shows up better in a sort of different ecosystem, but, I was straight up wrong on Scoot's offensive impact. This one I was legitimately wrong on. The next one, this is a good one for you, but like I was saying with Jeremy Grant, like it ties back into the same point I was making there. It's like, what if, you don't, not every single time you park DeAndre in the corner, right? Like I'm not saying that, but what if like your good shooting, center did a little bit more spacing? What if when you play him scoot next to Anthony Simons, Ant is like a spacer on one pass away, so you can't help as much. And Jeremy Grant is in the strong side corner, so even though you're not going to help, you've still got that outlet there. And then you're running those screens with Jabari Walker or with Tamati Kamara, or even playing in smaller lineups and running that like little screens with Shaden Sharp, and like just a little more offense in general, little more offensive creativity. I think could open stuff up. This is a really good one. Over under Kevin Knox 9.5 steals. I took the over. I was wrong. Kevin Knox didn't make the team. But they did bring him out at media day, and this was like right around media day when we recorded this, and so I was like, well, I guess he's going to be on the team if they brought him out at media day. How a weird thing. Just something to learn and know about the Blazers PR team is maybe that last media day interview doesn't mean as much as I once thought that it had to, because why the hell else would it be out there doing media day if he wasn't already guaranteed a roster spot? Kevin Knox did not record a steal for the Blazers. Never appeared in a game. I was wrong on that one. I took the over. I thought he was going to get a 10th steal. Chris Murray is the next one. 35.5% from the field, over under of 35.5 overall field goal percentage. This was hateration, and I even emailed Ben when he sent me the list. I was like, hey, is this a typo? Is this a typo? You got this wrong? Is this a typo? I took the over and I got it right. Chris Murray shot 40.5% from three. I was pushing, here's the funny part about this. I was pushing Ben. I was like, you should probably push it up to 45 and some change. But he doesn't change the lines for me. The lines are set. He's great, as you'll see in some of these. He's incredible. He gets them really right, and that's why we love doing them each fall. Chris Murray struggled on offense. I think he has some real defensive chops, but I don't think it's going to be like he has to figure out how he's going to be effective on offense. He's okay as a cutter. He's okay on the move, moving to his left, but he really can't shoot, and they don't treat him like that. Like you shoot below 30% from three, and defenses really ignore you in a kind of an aggressive way. That's a problem. Like that's a problem. He's got to figure out how he can be a positive on offense. It's not like it's not a do or die or whatever for him, right? Like a make or break is probably what I should have said there. But like this year two, he's got to figure out how to be a positive offensive player, either as, improving his dribbling and passing a little bit, like so he can be effective there, or and really just like he needs to make standstill threes. I mentioned at one point this year on a show, it's like he doesn't even need to make like a bunch of threes. He just needs to make the open ones so they guard him a little bit differently. Like what if he just made 40% of the butt naked threes he gets? Like when they straight up do not stand near him and say, hey, shoot it. He's missing those, right? He's missing 70% of the unguarded ones. If he makes more of those, he's a much better offensive player. But I don't think he can be an NBA player if he doesn't improve fairly significantly from what he was in year one, was very bad on offense. I don't think he'd be an NBA player. And that said, a ton of defensive potential. Guards a bunch of different spots, totally understands team defense, competitive, strong on-ball defender. It's just like the offense was far enough away to make you think like he's got to get there. Year one, you can erase it all with better years 2 and 3, and he's a first round pick. He's probably going to get 4 full seasons to figure it out. No reason to panic or anything like that. No panic button with Chris Murray, but like he's got to get there. Got to get there on offense. The next one, Duop Reith. The over under was 35.5% from 3. I took the under, and it was over. I took the under, and I was wrong. Hater. And I took the over. My reasoning on this was I didn't think he was going to get the volume, and then if you don't get the volume, you end up having a tough. You can have like a bad shooting week, right? And then you're like, oh, he only shot 31% from 3. It's like, well, he only took 43s, right? Like he just didn't take that many. Instead, Duop Reith played every night. One of the great stories, him and Tamati Kamara, the best 2 stories of the season for the Blazers. The actual 3-point percentage, 35.8. Ben is a genius. There's nobody better at this. There are like the people who make professional betting lines, like say FanDuel, who's a sponsor of this podcast. They're pretty darn good at it too. But Ben is great. Ben's just like an amateur who's a basketball fan. Incredible at it. Duop Reith came out shooting threes every time he touched the ball. He cooled off a little bit. He was shooting well above league averages, like a little in between 36 and 37% and some change, or 36% and some change. He was above that for a lot of the season. Cooled off a little bit when he played more, and kind of just had more on his plate. Didn't keep the efficiency up, but he's a really intriguing offensive player, right? He's fun. Like, I don't think he's going to morph into this like high level starter or anything like that. Like, he's a career backup and he's going to find his way. I think he's probably best suited as like a third center who plays in situational, he's not your every night backup center, but when you need that shooting center, Diop can be there and he can be a backup. Like, he's good enough to be a backup in the NBA. I think he's like a find, right? The offensive numbers the advanced numbers suggested he was like really, really positive for the Blazers. I think that overstates it a little bit. I think particularly his defensive EPM is probably a little overstated. The way that particular advanced metric has it, I don't think he's that good on defense. I like him though. Like, he's really easy to root for, and I find myself rooting for him. Like that is I am pulling for Diop, right? If he shoots next year right at this again, like 30, if he bumps it up to 36 and some change, like he's a league average 3-point shooter, with his ability to leverage shooting to attack off the bounce a little bit, and he's pretty solid as a roll man and as a roll man in the pick and roll. Like, that's a fun backup center. That's a fun, useful backup center and a really nice find for the Blazers. Diop earned himself a guaranteed season next year, and he was darn good. It's hard for me to figure out where he fits in sort of the grand scheme of the next good Blazer team. And chances are he won't be a part of it, but he's probably going to be a part of next year's roster unless he gets traded. And I enjoyed the Diop experience. Okay, let's close the show with more over-unders, talk about what we thought back in October and what that means now that we made it to May. We got Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, and more coming up. Join me in that final segment, won't you? Still the pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to the Locked On Blazers. Next over-under courtesy of listener Ben. 19.5 games started for Shaedon Sharpe. I hit the over, and I was correct. He started 25 games this year. But that's 25 at 35, right? Like, he because of the injuries, because of the timing of his injury and the timing of Anthony Simons' early injury and Scoot Henderson's early injuries, when Shaedon was available, his teammates weren't, and he played. I think 19.5 maybe was a little low, considering maybe what the Blazers wanted to do with Shea, but like, if the team had been healthy, that number would have been really intriguing, right? But you don't get 82 games. But say you get 75 games of good health, that number would have been really intriguing, because he probably, it was Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons to begin the year. And then it was going to be, Malcolm Brogdon was going to play probably ahead of Shaedon Sharpe because he was just more effective. But like, Sharpe was going to play. He's a big part of their future. They're invested in him. All of those things. Year two of Shaedon Sharpe, such a lost season, right? Like, he was a little bit worse in a different role. There were moments, there was a stretch, a 5-game stretch when he was playing too many minutes, but he was incredibly effective during that stretch. Stretches early in the year when you kind of saw the versatility that he can have on offense as an off-ball guy, coming off pin downs and getting into, being a threat to curl into the paint, being a threat to shoot from three, being a threat to catch and then attack off the bounce. You saw him a little bit of pick and roll stuff, although he didn't get to do a ton of it this year just because of the nature of the roster. Like, very, very brief glimpses of him being special. He's got the talent. The challenge for him is going to be putting it together with consistency. And like, this was a great year for him to see how consistent he could be. And instead he couldn't get right. He probably was, he probably played too many minutes, and that might have cost him the rest of the season because he just couldn't, his body couldn't hold up. But also, like, that's speculation. He might have just had sometimes you had a groin injury and you can't ever get right. And he tried to come back and it just didn't work. Ended up having surgery, should be back and ready to go in the summertime. We'll see if he plays for or even makes Team Canada. They're pretty loaded at guard. I don't know if he's going to play, but you could see Olympic Shea, although I would probably bet against it at this exact moment, but I certainly hope that he's playing. Such a bummer year two for Shaedon Sharpe. I'm really excited for year three. I'm really excited for year three for him because the dude is obviously talented. The dude is so obviously talented. What can he do with that talent is the question. Next one's over under 4.1 assists per game for Anthony Simons. I took the over and he got it. 5.5 was what he averaged. 4.1 was what he averaged the previous season. Different role. He was still playing off the ball to begin the season with Scoot, or at least like he was sharing a little bit of the responsibility with Scoot. I think Ant definitely improved as a playmaker this year. I think this was his best year as a playmaker in terms of making reads. Still not something that he's great at. He doesn't see it super quickly. He struggles against double teams, but I think unquestionably this was the best year he's had. In year 6 was his best year as a playmaker in terms of accepting the gravity of double teams. Gravity, like leveraging his own gravity by accepting the double teams and getting the ball out. Still struggles a little bit against it. Still struggles a little bit against really physical defenders. Those guys can make it tough on him. But he's improved as a playmaker, no doubt about it. He's improved. The thing he's best at is scoring. I think a role for him where he didn't have to be a primary playmaker. He could play off guys who are better playmakers. That Blazers just don't have that. Would be, and then a little bit of on-ball stuff, kind of mix it in when you need him to, when you maximize what Ant can do, which is score and particularly shoot off the dribble. Getting him in his right role, I think you could even see more of him as a playmaker. When you put him as like a primary point guard at all times, it's probably more than he can handle with like what his actual skill set is. That doesn't mean that he couldn't like functionally be point guard, but like what I mean, and by that I mean he needs to be the smallest guy on the floor. I think that's pretty obvious. But like he needs the best version of Ant would split duties of on-ball creation stuff and versus like being an off-ball shooter. He's a great catch and shoot guy this year. Like that variety and the ability to have multiple strengths on and off the ball is like actually what makes him good. And then Blazers sometimes put him in positions where it's like, hey, his weaknesses sure are showing up a lot. And there was times, he had a bad January and February. He just wasn't very good. That's on Ants. That isn't on the system necessarily. Over under 4 3-point attempts per game. I hit the under on that. That was from Matisse Thybulle. 4 attempts per game from 3. I has the under and was correct. He took 3.6 attempts per game from 3. He really struggled the second half of the season. When the calendar flipped to 2024, he stopped making threes, and then he stopped shooting threes, started passing up looks because he was shooting bricks for a long time. It kind of came back to him. His first half season in Portland, he was really good from 3. His second half season in Portland, he was pretty darn good from 3. And then that third half, the second half of this year, he wasn't good. And he kind of ended up back right around where he's been, which is a below average 3-point shooter. He had stretches where he was way worse than that, but it's kind of just like the nature of it. Going to have peaks and valleys. If he can shoot, Matisse Thybulle's a really useful part on a good team. If he can't shoot, he becomes kind of the reason why he didn't work out in Philly, because it's like he's good enough on defense, but what he can't do shows up a lot, particularly in high leverage games. Can he be effective during the regular season? I think for any team, absolutely. It's like what is Matisse's overall appeal in the league if he's a non-shooter? It's significantly lower. And some of the reason that his volume was lower is because I think his confidence got a little bit shaken. He stopped putting him up. Over under 5.5 rebounds per game for Jabari Walker. I took the over and got it correct. He averaged 7.1 boards per game. Some of that was just volume. He started playing a lot, started starting in games in January as well. Jabari Walker can really rebound. He can really rebound. I think he's a competitive defender, and I think he has potential to be a pretty good one in terms of, because he plays hard, he's physical, and I think he has the sort of the right size and physical attributes to be a multi-position defender, and he has some want to, and want to is an important factor in there as well. But he's not quite there. He doesn't have much on offense for him right now. Other than that, he's a really good offensive rebounder. Right now he's a smaller He's not quite big enough to be like this big burly power forward, but he could totally play minutes at power forward, no problem. His best role is probably small ball 5, because he's like a pretty good decision maker coming out of pick and rolls. He just can't defend the rim, so I don't think you can consistently do that. And he doesn't shoot. And a small ball 5 that doesn't really defend the rim and doesn't really shoot is just like it's just playing smaller for no reason. You're not getting the real benefits of it. I think his future is being a 3-4, right? Like he's mostly playing power forward, about being able to guard both forward spots, being competitive enough to battle with 5s on switches. When he plays 5, he also doesn't rebound as well because guys are bigger than him, and like he's got great hands and great positioning. But if you just are giving up 6 inches or whatever it is, not 6, but like 4 and some change, like it's gonna be tough on him. That is a real skill. Like he's a high level rebounder in the NBA. He's probably going to have to shoot or become a much better passer to be like as a dribble handoff guy to be more effective on offense. Shooting is always going to be the separator for off-ball guys, like the way the league works. If you don't have the ball in your hands and you're a non-shooter, that's a problem. If you do have the ball in your hands and you're a non-shooter, you got to be creative. See what happens with Scoot Henderson if he can get there. But like shooting is going to be so crucial for guys who are off-ball spacer types in the league, because if you can't space, you got to do it some other way. And Jabari Walker plays below the rim, so putting him in the dunker spot is not ideal either. He has tools to be pretty good. He does. He's got to put it together. I think that's what the truth with a lot of the young guys, particularly Chris and Jabari Walker, Chris Murray and Jabari Walker. If they can figure out how they can be positives on offense or even neutrals on offense, and not like negatives, but neutrals on offense, they have other skills. Chris with his defense, Jabari with his physicality and his rebounding, to be positives, like net positives. But they got to climb up from like bad offensive players to neutral offensive players. And that's their path in this following season. The last over-under for you, Rob Williams, 6.5 points per game. I took the over and I got it right. He averaged 6.8 points per game. He played 6 games. Here's the thing though. In preparing for my Robert Williams like season end episode, my like sort of exit interview, season recap, a little player caps on Rob Williams, I watched some of his highlights. Like I watched his buckets and his assists. He's good. Like if Robert Williams is healthy, he's a good basketball player. It's just a big if. I don't know that he'll be, he was pretty non-committal in his exit interview, whether he was going to be able to play. He was I would say very cautious in putting a yes, I'll be ready for training camp stamp on it. Very, very cautious to do that. So for obvious reasons, right? He's played 41 games in 2 years. So like he wants to get back healthy, so he's not gonna stamp it, right? But I don't know if he's a Blazer next year or if he ends up getting traded, but like if Robert Williams is healthy, regardless of what jersey he's wearing, he can help. He can help. Just a bummer that he didn't do much for the Blazers this year and wasn't able to, and just like it stinks when anybody's body breaks down. And so what a terrible part of sports is that guys just like their body is, that it doesn't do what they want it to do, and what at its peak it's capable of making them such special athletes. Yeah, I'm bummed for Robert Williams. I hope he's back and healthy and playing, because he can hoop. Like he can pass. He's a great defensive playmaker with blocking shots and getting steals. And he's just like a fun, functional defensive player with some sort of intriguing offensive parts. That's going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow's show. We're going to talk Blazers pre-draft workout. They're hosting another one. You're listening to Thursday, May 30th show, and this afternoon, this morning, they're hosting their third pre-draft workout of the circuit. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk draft stuff. That is what we'll do to close the show, or close the week, rather. That's what we do. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube, free on all platforms. Tell your friends about the program. A 5-day a week, and every weekday Trailblazers podcast, all of May, all of June, all of July, 10 months out of the stinking year. You're not getting this anywhere else, so don't go look for it anywhere else. Tell your friends about Locked On Blazers, and then come back for tomorrow's show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.